I was looking for, and even Aragon was really amazing at that point. And I was not understanding anything. I was reading the docs once and several times, and I was really on the fence for a long time. But yeah, after some time and being consistent with learning and involved in the Aragon community, I started getting my feet wet on the technology and on the development. And from there, I start collaborating more closely with the Aragon technology and learning more about DAOs from different mentors on the Aragon community that they were like amazing and super capable people working there and trying to think hard about the DAO paradigm and how they might be shaping the future on society and on different aspects of human interaction. So yeah, after that, with some folks on Aragon, we start trying to develop more practical examples of DAOs, and we create how was the name? Like a community for doing that. This was on the in the Aracon, a conference that Aragon has, and after that, some start discussing about One Hive and ideas around what this community could become, and at that point the I think the first iteration of One Hive was on a hackathon, and we were start developing different pieces. A group developed one application, another group developed other application, and after some time, things start fitting together and becoming what they are on, like DAO template that has all the components that we are now using, like conviction voting and disputable applications and the agreement. And yeah, that's pretty much the background of my history and some of the One Hive and Aragon.
Yeah, I remember first finding Aragon. It must have been like late 2020, and I didn't really know anything about DAOs at that point, and I went through the create a DAO interface, and just going through that process was really interesting and like a learning experience, because they had the type of organizations you might be like. Are you a nonprofit? Are you an NGO? Are you a club or a recreational group? I forget what the options were, but it was like these are the type of organizations it might be, and then going through minting your token and distributing it to the founders of the DAO. It was a really exciting setup process until I finally finished it, and then the MetaMask popped up, and it was like, okay, now you can create your organization. That'll be $1,600.
Yeah, that was a big problem, and even I think it was a bit a combination of things that happened on that. I think the gas problem was a bit under was not considered like a so important problem in a sense, because a lot of people was thinking that Ethereum 2 was going to be already
Right.
feasible at that point. So
Yeah.
I think some of the decisions of several of these technologies that were pushing the limits of what you can do on Ethereum were like getting some compromisers on that kind of like us optimizations versus trying to come up with new one and really future forward solutions. And at the same time, I think, yeah, like Alan was really ahead of his time at that point. And yeah, I was having a conversation like last month or the months before with Sam and Paulo about all the cool features or like advancements that the Aragon OS framework has for the time. And we were now seeing several of them being like re-implemented on Genosis and OpenZeppelin and several other DAOs that are like becoming more mainstream.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was really, I think, cool to see how that, but at the same time, not, being, so that's also something to learn from, that the timing is also important. And also, even though you have a good technology at one point, it might not be ready like for adoption.
Yeah, I wonder how different the space would be if 3 years ago people knew that ETH 2.0 was more than 3 years away. And like everyone wasn't planning for it like it was 2 months away for years now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So with OneHive, how quickly into OneHive becoming a sort of full organization did Gardens become something that you guys were working on?
I think it was pretty close from the start. I think it was Sam that has a really cool proposal. Like, I think it was at that point maybe HackMD, but I'm not sure what we were using for sharing the ideas. And yeah, he shared like this idea of like having several DAOs being interacting on the same like website. So this was already called Gardens as well, and we were thinking how that might be happening eventually, and it was discussed also. I think Luke had with really good ideas, and yeah, I think from that point to what we have right now is pretty much what we had in mind. Even though we are missing maybe some activity feeds that we were thinking that could be cool to have, like contextual information from all the different DAOs that are interacting on the Gardens network. So you will be seeing maybe new proposals or people that you follow, like what kind of proposal they are supporting and things like that. But
yeah, it seems like we haven't even really begun to tap into the types of network effect things that you can do with Gardens. Or like I saw I'm not too familiar with it, but the proposal inverter from Common Stack, which is linking proposals, it sounds like, between DAOs. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I read the article of DAO to DAO interactions, and I agree with you. I think we are not yet exploring enough about how a network of DAOs could be leveraging each other to achieve maybe higher and more involved tasks that otherwise they can't. And I think we are yet to figure out what are the tools we need for that. And I think the proposal inverter is for sure one of those. I think right now we are doing it more manually with the like liquidity proposal between two gardens, creating the conviction voting founding for that, and then managing the whole multi-sig for adding the liquidity. But eventually, having tools for doing that kind of interaction might be interesting to see.
Yeah, it's probably a good sequence to do that anyways, where like instead of trying to invent new things for DAOs to use that they may or may not actually want to use, just like building the infrastructure to match what the DAOs are already doing because they want to do it in the first place. Like, yeah, clearly now we see that there's demand for shared liquidity.
Yeah.
So we can build based on that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, having these small experiments like the ones did by Kiveth and OneHive and OneHive and Bright ID were really great data points to explore further. So I like how we explore that in particular.
Yeah. Yeah. So now that it's been more than a year of gardens being built, what do you think today are the things that are surprising that you would not have guessed would have become the like what gardens would grow to today, or things that you were expecting that have been exactly the way you were hoping they would be?
Yeah, I think on my personal experience, seeing the different communities that are actively using the sites to have discussions around how to allocate the resources, and like seeing these uh, cross initiatives between maybe people from one hive asking foundings to give it to certain things, or people from one hive asking to write ID for adding some specific features. I think that's really cool to see, and it's great that, and I think it's expanding to from the one hive vision that we had of trying to give voice to anyone, and now it's even possible to be heard from different communities that are value aligned on certain uh, missions, and in this case, public goods, and trying to create an economy around that.
Yeah. Yeah, the public goods thing, that's what brought me to gardens. So when I first found One Hive, the reason I was most excited about it was because I thought it was a really useful economic model for funding public goods. And I like I slowly learned one by one how wrong I was about everything One Hive related when I started. Um, one of the things I was definitely wrong about was that you would use One Hive to fund things like ending homelessness, or like the types of real world public goods that I was imagining. Just because it would have been such a broad scope for One Hive to like try to be that big of a concept. But then also I didn't realize at the time that One Hive already was funding public goods, like Gardens and Celeste and Quests, and like everything that's coming out of this is already public goods, and One Hive is already a niche public good creator that's funding these tools that are super useful for people in Web3. And um, the the first Gardens calls that I joined, I thought Gardens was interesting, that like this One Hive model could be used for other organizations. I think it took me like 2 months to realize what that really meant, is that like that economic model can be niche created to solve any specific public goods problem that you want to solve. And that was my light bulb moment. And like personally, when I decided that Gardens was the most interesting project to me in crypto. But it sounds like you guys knew from the beginning that there was like the ability to fund public goods with these things. Was that one of the things that you guys were thinking about as you were building that?
I think probably Luke was, and we were following the lead at first and learning, but I think both Will and Luke had a lot of these public goods and hardware tax mentality from the get-go, and trying to create more value-aligned communities. And yeah, I think always trying to optimize for building an organization that allow everyone to be heard and allow everyone to be involved without a clear leader figure was something we like, and we would like to create. And I think it was not it need a few iterations of and we started with I think a simple company using some applications of Aragon built by the Autark team that allow you to allocate like something similar to what Coordinate is now, allow to people in the organization to give certain values, certain points per week. And I think that was a nice way to distribute the voting power at first. And then we start building the Moloch fork of but for one hive and for the Aragon framework. And we like what we like at that point about Moloch that we didn't have an Aragon was the rage quit functionality that allow anyone to be able to parts way and create a new DAO if they don't like what the people are deciding at whatever point on the DAO. But I think once we start thinking what can be next and how conviction voting can allow these smaller groups to be heard, and at the same point in time, the whole concept of disputable applications that is like this barrier you are putting around your rules, and this allow you to enforce certain behaviors that you like and that you want to abide in the community. So I think the combination of those ideas was what we start thinking. Okay, this is something we want to iterate for the next version, and we start like moving the voting up and the conviction voting to be disputable, and include the concept of the covenant or agreement, and yeah, that was the current iteration we're on.
Yeah, it took me a while to appreciate the governance structure of Gardens, where I think at first I thought it was complicated and a little overwhelming, and then over time I've kind of seen bit by bit how like all of those elements that are protecting the Gardens governance structure are so important, and then like especially when you see the types of governance problems that other DAOs are running into, like hacks and people buying votes, and it's like really things that could have been easy to prevent with the like basic better governance. But it seems like you guys were like I had almost just the opposite approach of actually trying to think through those problems first and then building to solve for potential problems, versus other people who are just making a multi-sig first, and then as the problems come up they try to patch them.
Yeah,
But it like yeah, I guess were these potential problems all theoretical at that point, or were you guys seeing issues that were happening with some of the DAOs that you were trying to like specifically fix?
I would say we have also a bit of advantage in the DAO research in a sense, because Aragon is a technology that is around for some time already, and we were even doing experimentation internally in the Aragon community, or even like I think researching a lot from, I think probably Luke was one of the spearhead on this research about DAOs and how you can give community more power without compromising the mission you are looking for to achieve. So that I think was a clear, having that resource was really important. And I think also a lot of ideas that also SEM has around following the Ostrom principles was also a guiding principle for how you can manage a community as a common good without giving anyone too much power to overrule the whole system. So yeah, once even I think once we have conviction voting without being disputable, at that point there was even more power from the big token holders, because the challenge option was not possible. But once we moved to a system with a disputable applications, is when once you give everyone in the community the chance to take apart and decide how to do it, how to decide on the future of what's been done.
Yeah. I always talk about how the whole concept of either supporting or not supporting a proposal makes the types of conversations in the forums seem way more constructive, because you're not like pitting the community against each other by saying yes or no, we want to do this. It's I support this or I don't support this yet, but if these things changed about this proposal, I might support it. I think that, like, just from the perspective of someone who's going to make a proposal, it's way less threatening and drastic of a measure, it feels, if you're creating a proposal in that type of environment.
That's a good point.
Yeah. One of my other favorite things to think about is you and the Uruguay crew working on this together. Like when I was talking to you guys when you had that Airbnb that you booked in Montevideo, and it's just funny to me that this is a global technology, but you guys have this hub of guys that are pretty close in Uruguay that seem like you guys have a lot of fun building this together.
Yeah, I think it was something that came up from, as I was saying, getting involved in their own community and getting excited about what was happening there. And yeah, we had a chance to learn a lot from the people that was around the community at that time, and they were like really great people that was open to share what they were doing and trying to come up with really cool stuff. So yeah, we were like really excited to be involved and trying to push from our side also to make it happen.
Did you guys know each other before Aragon, or is that where you guys met, in the Aragon community?
With Fabri, we were close, but yeah, with Rodrigo, for example, no, we were more. We were like knowing each other, but yeah, when we start collaborating in Aragon, we get more close with the work we were doing there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a little micro hub that popped up out of nowhere. I think if Gardens continues to grow at the rate it does, then I think it's safe to say that Uruguay has had an enormous impact on the future of digital organizations because of you guys.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, as I think we had a lot of uh, help on this. We were also like reusing a lot of technology that Aragon built and concepts of. I think we couldn't be do that without everything that was already happening. So yeah, we are really grateful for that and what we learned in the process.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. I was also hoping that we could talk about some of the stuff that you're working on now and thinking about now. And when we were talking earlier, we were like putting together all the various things that are going on. And there's the updating gardens profiles to ceramic.
Yeah,
There's the vesting tokens app. There's fluid proposals. And there's kind of just broad token engineering considerations and things that need to be modeled and thought about more. Um,
yeah,
and those are just like a few of them. But yeah, what are you excited about that you're working on now?
yeah. I think the trying to have the migration to ceramic is really cool. It's something we have in the to do for some time, but I think the technology was a bit raw in the edges at that still. So right now I think we are able to update the whole uh, technologies we were using, and we are now really close to migrate to that. And I think once we have these ceramic profiles, it opens a door for experimentation with the decentralized user data and how that could be useful in the Gardens network. And yeah, this is also related to a potential activity feed and how that reputation or whatever could be used, maybe also involve some dework data that you are creating while you are contributing. So yeah, trying to think about how that information, even that would be private or could be helpful for collaboration between gardens. And yeah, the other thing that you bring up, like the founding, the fluid proposal is something we start thinking with Paulo and Sam recently, and is trying to come up with a stream of founds using a similar structure that we currently have for founding proposals, but instead creating these streams similar to what you can do with Superfluid, but from the gardens. And this for the user would be a new kind of proposal that is a founding proposal, a streaming proposal. And under the hood, we will be using a new Aragon app developed that is the Superfluid Aragon app, and also using some kind of um, middleware contract to get the information from conviction voting to know how much stake people are putting on this new kind of proposal. Yeah, I think this is interesting because it's a new use case for conviction voting, and it's something that we are noticed that is relevant for certain use cases where you want to be giving continuous founding instead of one-time payment once you reach enough conviction on a proposal.
Yeah, it seems like it's a really good use of like one of the key features of conviction voting where you're kind of constantly signaling support like rather than having binary decisions that it's a relative thing based on what people are interested in or like to support at that specific time.
Yeah,
And it seems like that matches really well with the idea of streaming tokens that
Yeah,
you're like opening and
indeed,
shutting valves that are like affecting the flow rates of money
indeed.
distribution.
Yeah, and, indeed, and it's, if done right, could lower the the paperwork or whatever you need to do when you are creating a proposal and all that overhead. So that's interesting as well. And the cool thing is that in the kickoff conversation we have about this, start to developing this, Michael Sargam joined us to the discussion, and he was saying that when he thought about conviction voting, like the initial implementation was more in line with this concept of, like you were mentioning about continuous signaling of certain decision of the community, and that could then become whatever. Like right now we are thinking of using fluids of streams of funds, but eventually could become also a way to decide on a parameter. For example, if we want to know, or we want to decide what's the, I don't know, conviction, the decision voting period of days, we can create like a conviction using this new kind of conviction that decide what is the right value depending on the conviction that people put on that proposal. But yeah, that's
Interesting. That's a very interesting use case of like just deciding values. Like we have the proposal in OneHive, in the form at least, to increase the minimum threshold for
example,
conviction for a proposal to pass.
yeah, that could become, for example, a conviction voting that people will, depending on how much people stake, it will be changing the percentage of threshold.
Right.
Or lower it, or make it higher.
There's so many things like that.
Yeah.
It's like they're not necessarily funding decisions, but you want to decide on a amount or a a value for something related to governance that's not exactly just money going to a wallet. There's so many of those.
Yeah, and that's one thing that came up on that conversation as well. So yeah, something to look up.
Yeah. And then another thing that is interesting to me especially is the overlap between that and retroactive funding, which is something that I've been trying to push for a long time. Basically the idea that we have funding proposals that distribute honey to working groups for work they've done in the past, instead of as funding proposals that fund future work, and then having those be vesting streaming tokens. And yeah, I think that having that kind of funding model is like a really good way of kind of like having money going to the working projects that are actually creating that amount of value, but then also having people be aligned on long-term work, and like having a streaming token that's going to keep coming to you in the future really makes you want to keep like working hard to get more retroactive fundings in the future, but then also like because it's going to take you a while to grow the money that you've already earned, you're aligned with the rest of OneHive at like making sure the value of honey goes up. It seems like there's some way that fluid proposals could also be used for that kind of payment structure too. And then separate from that, there's the vesting application, which is, it sounds like it's a little closer to what superfluid is, except for just with a few features that the Superfluid doesn't offer?
Yeah.
Is that something you guys are actively working on?
Yeah, we were doing some prototype on that, and we are still on the process of creating a simple UI to try it out. This is using a contract that is like a ERC20 token, but is a vested ERC20 that has a underlying token that you will be vested on a certain period of time. So you will say what is the cliff, what is the scheduled vest time, and yeah, the underlying token will be vested on your tokens that you vested token you have. So you will be able to redeem them once the vesting start happening.
Yeah. If you're always asking, where next?
For how great Superfluid is, it's
travel card for you.
pretty frustrating that you can't just set start and end dates with Superfluid. And yeah, I was talking with them at ETH Denver. I forget who I was talking to from Superfluid, but I was like, hey, when do you think you'll be able to like pick an end date for Superfluid? And it's like, oh, it's like way harder than it sounds like. And I think they just kind of like built it under this like different architecture that's good for other types of streaming payments, but like there's like when you open up a stream, you put collateral in, and if you go over that collateral, or if you don't end your stream in time, then it punishes you from your collateral that anyone in the network can like enact. I think my understanding of it was it's kind of like Maker, how like the people are incentivized to liquidate people that are like not meeting their collateral requirements. But it's kind of frustrating if you just want to say, I want to give 10 honey to this person and I want it to vest starting in 1 month and ending in 6 months.
Yeah, you're right.
And the fact that it's an ERC20, what does that let you do that you wouldn't be able to do with Superfluid? Because I'm not sure what the type of token is that the Superfluid X tokens.
Yeah, I think the Superfluid has a lot more functionalities related to their stream. I think you can do like several, you can stream your stream, so you will be able to have like a continuous stream of several hubs. But in this case, it would be like just having a token that is best under a period of time. But yeah, you will be able to configure a cliff and a vesting schedule.
Yeah, that would be nice. And then I get the other confusing part of Superfluid to me was how the like how obviously if you have a streaming token, it's not like you have a transaction that's happening every second. And Superfluid is pretty ingenious where like it's tracking how much tokens are streaming, but the tokens don't actually like get transferred until you unwrap them. So it seems like it's working more like a clock that you can pull out however much you've earned at any point, but it's not streaming that whole time. Would an ERC20 version of the token work similarly?
Yeah, you will have like vest all that you until you redeem or you transfer it, and you will be receiving the amount of token you have vest on that period of time. So I think in that case is the same.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably the only way you can do it. Like even with our tiny fees on Gnosis chain, I don't think you'd ever want a contract that's actually making transactions happen every minute or whatever. Yeah, I think everything related to streaming is interesting to me. Like that's also, that just seems like a technology that we don't have in the real world that would be useful. Like even just for people's salaries, the fact that people get paid bi-weekly is a problem for a huge chunk of the world. Like for anyone who's living paycheck to paycheck, that's kind of inconvenient. And it just seems like one of the technologies that comes out of cryptocurrency that is better than any current system in our existing financial system. So it's cool to see that stuff getting worked on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting, like, primitive that you can build on as well.
Yeah. So, going on to token engineering. So, when we were talking earlier, it reminded me of what Sem's been talking about recently, and what I hear from MZ and the whole token engineering commons crew, which is basically that there aren't enough people in this space that actually understand token engineering and how to build these systems. And we need to find ways to like expand that knowledge and get more people to understand that stuff. What made you, what kind of like was that light bulb for you?
Yeah, I think it's something that I'm growing on interest recently and in the last few months, because seeing how the token engineering community approach this new design area, and seeing how valuable it could be to better understand the system you are trying to build, and trying to draw principles and things that might help you to better design what you are building is, I think, really cool. And I think it's something that in the earlier part of the smart contract history, it was not even something that people think about, because it was mostly let's experiment, let's try to understand what is possible with this new way of building, like money Legos or whatever. And I think right now we are starting to reach a point that things are becoming more complex, and more, at the same time, more toolings are being developed that allow you to do this kind of analysis, like the CAD. And yeah, just to be aware that that's something that is possible, and that is important if you want to create better systems designs. Yeah, it's interesting to, and something I'm interested to learn more about.
Yeah, what are the types of situations that you can model or that would be helpful to model?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience with it. From our previous uh, experiment that the Mohai community did around this subject was with trying to design the dynamic issuance, for example. So we analyze what could be good parameters of issuance for the Honey token and the Honey economy. So I think there was a Luna Swarm group created to run some modeling around that, and trying to answer the questions of what are the a good enough issuance per year, and how the issuance or burning of tokens could be affecting the supply, and how that might change the behavior of the token. So yeah, trying to answer those questions. And right now we are like spawning a new Luna Swarm research group around the fluid proposals.
Nice.
And I think the interesting question to try to answer would be how can affect what is the effect of having several fluid proposals competing with each other on the gardens system, because community will have to decide between them, and they are like continuously, they are always active, and people need to will have to stake on some of them or several of them, and that will have an effect on how the participation and how difficult also other founding proposals will become. So yeah, trying to...
Right, because proposals are based on total active stake.
Yeah.
So all of the votes that are on proposals. So if you have a bunch of people that are voting on signaling proposals like that, then you're making the funding proposals harder to pass.
Yeah, for example, that's one effect. And also maybe that people need to be more, and I think this is something I'm excited about also, the fluid proposal, is that might have some prioritization aspect for the community as well, because maybe even though there are like 3 or 4 fluid proposals competing with each other, maybe only 3 of them can get a stream of funds for the amount they are requesting. So people need to decide, okay, what are the most important for us now?
Right. How hard would it be to have a separate conviction voting instance within the same garden? For example, if you wanted to have a voting system like that didn't affect the other funding proposals.
No, yeah, I think you can deploy a new conviction voting application on the, like, install a new conviction voting with the same parameters, but they will be like a separate instance. So you were saying to use it for what? Sorry.
Like if you wanted, for example, to have a fluid proposal system where voting on those proposals would not affect the rest of the funding proposals.
Yeah, I think you can do that with a separate conviction voting app. And yeah, of course, then you will have to have the UI in some way updated. But yeah, you can have a second instance of conviction voting that only will only be considering the stake of that instance and not the other one.
Nice. Yeah, I'm interested in those Luna Swarm meetings, like basically just to be a fly on the wall in those rooms and hear you guys talk about that.
Yeah, the next one is on Friday. It's already on the Hype calendar. I might be not able to join the first one because I have another appointment, but I will try to summarize what I had in mind. But I think it will be a really cool, and it will be happening every other Friday. And the intention is to start thinking how we can answer these questions, like the one we were discussing.
Yeah. Nice. Looking forward to it.
Because like the point you raised about having a separate conviction voting only for the fluid proposals might be more, maybe the right way to go ahead, instead of like having all in the same one.
Yeah. It seems like there's a lot to think through. and like how much funding is available, and yeah, it's an interesting problem. All right, well, we went over an hour, so I don't want to take any more of anyone's time. And this has been streaming on YouTube, so I think there's going to be a recording. I think this gets recorded both on Twitter and on YouTube, so there's ways that people can check this out after if they want to. But I'm really glad that you came on and talked, Gabby. This has been an awesome conversation.
No, thank you, Paul.
Looking forward to the stuff Gardens keeps building. Fun to be a part of.
Sure.
All right. Well, that's it.